So thanks, Joe. Thanks, Brian, for having me here. Thanks, everybody. So I'm going to talk about some issues that arise when there are concurrent posts when you have form sets in Django. I'm Brad Martsberger. I work at Procured Health. Just to give you a brief mention of what's Procured Health, we make a software for hospitals. It's a platform where they can manage their workflow for purchasing products and product research and that kind of thing. It's not particularly important to the rest of the talk, but that's where I work. All right, so most of the talk is going to be about a view that looks a bit like this. I've simplified it somewhat, but we have a form set that's built from a model form set factory. So you have some model. We have can delete equals true, and we're not worried about editing any fields on this model. We're just going to have a set of these models, and you can remove them if you want. Our query set in this case will just be every instance of that model. We create our form set, and then we check if it's valid. If it's valid, we save it. We redirect you somewhere. If we didn't have a valid form set, then we just render the template. Okay, so that's some code. Well, what does this actually look like on a page? Let's see. So here's a page where we have a model in a form set, and we can delete the model. So we have this little table here. Our model is some kind of project, and we have this delete column on the right. We have a save button at the bottom, so we can select, say I'm going to delete this project 1. We go save, and there's no more project 1 there. Pretty simple stuff. We have a form set where we can delete things. So how do we get concurrent posts? What's this about? If I have this page, same page loaded in 2 tabs, I can delete project 2 on this tab, and then I could come over here, and that form is still loaded from the original get. So I could try to delete project 2 again. And then these are happening close enough in time that they look like they're concurrent. And that's what's giving us this problem. So first case, we have 2 people working on this, Alice and Bob, and they both delete the same instance in the list. So we can try to delete project 2. So Alice deleted project 2. Bob is going to try to delete project 2. And what's going to happen? We get validation error. This is not what we want. Normally you'd expect a form set or a form would catch a validation error and you could recover from this. The issue here, if we look at the stack trace, which is not always fun to look at, but here you have, we're calling form set save here. And this is not inside the form set is valid method. So this validation error is getting raised outside of the clean method, which is why it's never getting caught. And your user is going to get a response back with status code 500, and nobody's going to be happy about that. So that's the first case. Our 2 users attempt to delete the same object from the list, and you get a validation error that's not caught. Okay, next that can happen. So in this case, the result is an uncaught validation error. Next case, similar to the first, they both are going to delete the same instance, but in this case, they're both going to delete the last instance. So we'll go to this tab, we'll delete project 62. Oops. And then Bob will come in and try to delete project 62. And here we don't even get the validation error, we get an index error. What's happening here is that the first user deleted the last object in this set. The second user tried to delete the last object in the set. When the form set was tried to be created, we tried to reference an object outside of the query set that it was built on. And so we get an index error. Again, your user is going to get a response with status code 500, and nobody's going to be happy about that. Okay. What happens when they delete 2 different items in the list? So we can come back over here and look at an example where, let's say Alice is going to delete project 5, and then, oops, and then Bob will try to delete project 6. Here we don't get an error, but we see something strange happens here. Project 6 is now listed twice, which is not really the behavior that we want here. It turns out that the first project 6 in this list is the old project 5. It's actually got the wrong model attached to the wrong ID for this. If Bob tries to delete that original project 6, he's trying to delete the old project 5, and we get our validation error again. So all of these cases have an issue with them. And there's at least 3 open tickets on the Django project ticket system right now that reference the exact same kind of errors. There's validation errors, there's index errors. Some suggestions are that you should just count the number of objects that are supposed to be in the form and see if it's the same number. That would cure some of these problems, but if we were paging this list, you could delete, say, project 4 from this list, and you're still going to get another set of the same number. So here we've got 10 objects on the page every time, and your 2 concurrent posts are always going to have the same number, so just counting the number in the set and making sure that it's right isn't going to get you what you want here. So that's the first set of issues with concurrent posts. Right? If 2 people are editing the same form set, they can both be trying to delete the same data, or even if they're deleting different data, you can have your save not work correctly. Is there any questions about that? Okay. So another case where we can see these kind of problems is when we're creating many-to-many relationships. So we might have 2 objects that have a many-to-many relationship between them, and our users are going to be linking these objects. So this happens in our site quite frequently. One of the examples is we have medical devices or products in our database, and we have also product literature. So this is published literature, and we have a research team that's responsible for mapping literature to products. A given literature can reference several products. A given product can have many pieces of literature associated with it. So this is a many-to-many relationship. And our view might look something like this. We have a form that allows us to find the literature. This is a document search form that's going to return some set of documents. We have, again, a model form set factory over these documents. In this case, we're going to specify a particular form that simply allows us to select the documents. We're going to build our form set, and then if it's valid, for each form that's selected, we're going to add that document to the product we have in our view. Okay, so let's see what that actually looks like. So here we have an example of a product. There's currently no, here we see no study associated with this, so we can say let's add some document. So the search form handles what happens when I search for documents, and it gives me some results. Then I can select the results and add it to the product if I like. Okay. And let's do this with 2 concurrent posts. So we'll do this again. We'll do the same search. So we have the same list of documents on this tab as we have on this one. And let's look what happens if the first person adds this document with title fixation device study. Okay. So now we can go back to this page. Now we have this study in our list, fixation device study. And what happens if this other person says, okay, yeah, I want to add this study to this product? Okay, there's no error. We go back to our page, and we'll notice that the wrong document was added to this product. Is that clear that this is not the document we wanted to add? Neither person added this document, right? So this is worse than even getting a status code 500 to your user. You've actually done the wrong thing here. Let's delete these and step through what exactly happened there. So, oops. The first person adds the fixation device study. Now when the second person goes to add fixation device study, what they're actually adding is the first document in the result set. But when this is run again, there's only one of these documents that's not already linked. This document is not going to be in the result set. And so this document will be the first document in the result set. So we're going to add the wrong document to the product. Right? This is, I think, the worst case scenario, right? You've given no error to your user, you've done the wrong behavior here. This is something we actually is very important to fix. You're not going to get any notification when this happens, right? Okay. It's also possible in this case to have an uncaught index error. If, depending on how if the first person adds a second document and the next person tries to add the second document as well, we'll get an uncaught index error, same as we had before. Okay, so the basic problem is Alice and Bob make their GET requests at the same time. So they get the same form presented to them. Alice's post essentially invalidates Bob's form. Right? The form that he has is no longer a valid form because some of those things have been removed from it. Bob submits a form with post data that references objects not present in the query set the form is built on. Right? So he's got a form that's not valid, and the post that he makes comes from that invalid form. The query set that the form will be built on in his post request has different objects than the post data that he submits. Okay. So let's take a look at how we fix this at Procured Health. We're going to validate the post data against the query set before we even instantiate the form set. So the model form set factory uses the base model form set in Django. So we're going to subclass that, and we're going to sneak into the init method here. And before we initialize a base model form set, we're going to take the data that's passed in, the query set that's passed in, and make sure that these two things actually agree with each other. Okay. So the first argument to this is data. The third argument is query set. And we're simply going to say, if we get these two arguments, data and query set, then we're going to build up the IDs that's in the data. So when you make this post, you're posting all of the model IDs that you're intending to delete or map or whatever you're doing. And you're going to have all the query IDs from the query set. And if these two sets are not the same, then we know that this form was invalid. So we're just going to erase the data and then instantiate from our superclass as before. But so we sneak into the init method and we say, before we do anything, we're going to check the data that Bob submits against the query set we built his form on. And if these don't agree with each other, then we're going to throw out the data that Bob submitted and just give him back the form as normal. We're also going to attach an error message here so that we can tell Bob that something happened when he submitted this form. Okay. So what does this look like? I think I have this. So these safe URLs have this feature built on them. So we have the same data set here. We'll have Alice delete project 3. And then Bob can try to delete project 3. And we give him an error message. And this is just the error. This is just the message that we kind of settled on to display to the user when something happens like this. Your changes cannot be processed because this data was changed before your submission. Here's your form back. It doesn't have these missing projects in it that have already been deleted. And there's just one small change to the view code. When you call model form set factory, for the form set argument, you pass in this form set that we created. The default argument here is base model form set, so we're passing in something that is subclassed from that and alters the init method. And what happens when we double post now, we see that we get our error message that we like. Just to close the story on this, the same issue exists for inline form set factory. So this is all for model form set factory. Inline form set factory is slightly different in that you don't have to specify a query set for it to be over. Inline form set factory, you have the model that your form set is over, and you have a parent model that has a foreign key to. If you specify an instance of the parent model, it'll build its own query set for everything that points to that parent model. So the building of the query sets is just slightly different, and there's a different default form set that it's based on, and so we subclass that one as well. But essentially works the same. You look at the post data, the query set data, and you make sure that these two agree with each other before you actually pass that data on to your form set. So that's the basic idea of this. We were actually seeing these errors in production, we would get emails from Sentry about these errors, and for a little while we didn't quite understand what was going on. Why are we getting index errors? Why are we getting validation errors? Until we kind of hunted this down and stuck in this fix. Since putting this in, okay, we don't see this error anymore. Hopefully we've fixed this issue. I'd be happy to take questions on that if anybody has opinions about how that works. Sure.
So what happens if you validate the form and then Bob validates the form and then Alex changes it, or somebody else changes it after you validate it but before you went to the super?
Yeah, so the question is, what happens if the two posts are concurrent, as in they're right at, within milliseconds of each other, and we run this code and we validate that the form is okay, and then we process, so this is running for Bob, and then we actually run the save for Alice after we've instantiated this, and then we run the save for Bob. That's the question? And the answer is that this is all running in a transaction, and so that is going to keep us from crossing paths like that. The issue that transaction doesn't save us in the previous case because there's one GET request and then a second POST request. And those two together don't happen within a transaction. And it's between those two where the data becomes invalid. But Bob's POST request, everything we do once we get that is going to run inside of a transaction. And so that's going to be atomic within the database. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes. I've seen at least 3. From what I see in the discussion of the tickets, it's just not clear what's causing the problem. Yeah, I think one of the reasons that we found this is that our internal research team does this kind of mapping between many-to-many objects a lot, and I think they might be a little sloppy. They'll open several tabs at a time, and then they'll do the same operation on each. So I mean, literally what I was showing you is what they were doing. So I think if you were actually to wait until you saw 2 different users do the same thing at the same time, you probably wouldn't see it very often. I think we were seeing it more often because we had individual users that were doing almost exactly what I was showing you.
Is there another way to identify a record in the form set other than by the index? Can you use ID or some other identifier?
The ID comes in with it. And in the example that I showed where you map a document to a product and the wrong one gets mapped, when I first saw this, I would imagine, why aren't you checking the instance against the ID you got? But the way the Django form set builds the forms, it builds the instance without checking that ID. So you get the instance off the form and it's the wrong instance. Even though you've submitted the ID of the object you want, the instance they attach to the form doesn't have that ID. So they're not checking that. Yeah, I remember when we were seeing this, we also saw some integrity errors from unique constraints that would happen with the same thing. I was not able to reproduce that when I was writing the talk, so I left it out. That was happening a couple years ago, and I don't remember the exact steps. But I'd be interested to know if the other problems that you've seen have the same root cause, and if it can be fixed the same way. Yep.
You found any limitations in this approach? Like reasons why maybe they would have left it open so that...
As far as I've seen, it hasn't kept us from writing any form sets that we wanted to. It hasn't prevented us from doing that. There is, I mean, it's possible to write form sets that this doesn't work for, but you wouldn't be using the model form set or inline form set factory to begin with. So, I mean, other form sets that don't use these base classes aren't fixed this way. But anything where we've wanted to use model form set factory or inline form set factory, we haven't seen this issue since. Yeah. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if this is, like if there are tickets like open for this, if this would be a good thing to try to get in mind to, seems like it's a great solution.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. So you asked if there are open tickets that have this issue. Is this something that should go into mainline Django? Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, again, this is something that we put in because we were seeing the errors. We never really, knew, okay, how frequent is this being seen? Is this solution, the right way to do this? It kind of met our needs. If it's something that, people think is the right way to solve this, I'd be happy to have this in. Okay, thank you very much.